Hello and welcome to Behind the Bearcat with Northwest Career Services, where we chat with Northwest faculty and staff members to hear about their career paths, how they came to Northwest, and advice they have for students. I'm Career Services Internship Coordinator Travis Klein.
And I'm Hannah Christian, the Assistant Director of Career Services.
And today we are joined by Pat Immel, who is a professor in the Department of Fine and Performing Arts.
Hello, folks.
Hi, Pat.
Glad to be here.
All right. So we're just talking about faculty, staff, where they started, how they got to Northwest. So a professor of fine and performing arts, can you tell us exactly what your degree was in, what your specialty is?
My specialty is screwing around. But, otherwise, no.
Fine and performing arts.
Fine and performing
we know
arts,
that.
yes,
that
yeah.
already tells us a lot.
Yes,
there.
right. When I was in high school, I helped one of my buddies. He was a DJ, and I helped him DJ, and we had lighting set up, and I loved doing the lights and just all of that, setting it up and figuring things out. And so that was where I kind of got the bug. And when I was I just got out of high school, a friend of mine started a band, and they were a band called Sergeant Friday. And they were really, really pretty amazing. They were, we played at some pretty big, this is Wisconsin, so we played Milwaukee. We played at a lot of the big bars in Milwaukee and Oshkosh, and but I did the lights for them. And again, that was even more real because DJing, but then the band started, and I really enjoyed doing that, and we got to work with some fairly big bands.
So did they play mostly in bars, or
bars,
did they actually go out? Did they have like?
No, we played mostly in bars. So that comes with its own dangers. As somebody that's just in college, we got free beer, and we made them pay. So I did, we opened up for some bigger acts, but then it got to the point where they were just about ready to go out on a bigger tour, like to the East Coast, sort of, and some things happened, and the band was done. Just like within about a week, it went from we're going to go out to the East Coast and we're going to do this to
folding,
just going. So it's like, okay, what am I going to do? And because this is what I've done, so it's like, okay, I need to go to college now, and still not knowing. Still at that point, I didn't know that theater. I knew that theater existed, but I didn't know that it existed as a career path. Mm-hmm. So I go to University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, go Titans, and I registered as a radio, TV, film student major, and I started taking classes. I didn't really get along with a lot of the people there. Not that we didn't like each other. I just they weren't
your people.
They weren't my people.
Weren't your people.
And I ended up taking a theater lighting class, and we started talking about stuff, and it's like, oh my God, this totally makes sense to me, and I get it, and I'm going to take more theater classes. And I started working on shows and started taking theater classes, and I was still taking radio, TV, film classes, and I didn't realize that you could change your major. I was like the first person in my family to go to college, so I didn't have. My parents really supported me, but they
didn't know how things
my kids
worked.
Now we can give them a lot better tips and what to do and what to look for and how to navigate through. But I just didn't have that, so I ended up finishing my broadcasting radio, TV, film degree, and then I had way more classes. I could have had a double major. I know I could have. So about halfway through my theater career at UW Oshkosh, I realized it's like I kind of like showing people what to do, and I like teaching people. And I asked, it's like, okay, what do you have to do to be a college professor? Okay, well, you got to go get master's degree, Master of Fine Arts. Okay, well, at that point, I probably had about a 1.6 GPA because I was working on shows all the time, and
And if you're in a major that's not really, like your major classes are not really interesting to you.
No, so
right?
it was
struggle
tough.
bus.
So so I realized right at that point, it's like, okay, I have to get my things in a group. I have to get all things situated. And so I figured it out. And from that point on, I had straight A's all the way through undergrad and all the way through grad school. So,
Did you go straight to grad school
after
you got done with your undergrad?
I did, yeah. Whatever it was, I can talk about that later, but I figured out what I needed to do. And so I ended up going to grad school in SIU, Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. There's quite a few Bearcats that are a lot. We're like, and there's somebody in my department, Steffi Dramby. She's also a Saluki. We're like locusts. We just kind of, we're all over the place, but it's awesome. So I went there. I was there from 95 until 98 and got my Master of Fine Arts degree in theater with an emphasis in lighting design. And I taught, like at bigger schools, when you're a graduate assistant, you actually teach classes. Mm-hmm. And I taught all, a Master of Fine Arts degree is 3 years. So I taught all 6 semesters that I was there, and that is. So
you started out like the first semester.
Like fresh. I was an undergrad, 6 months ago, and then I'm teaching classes, and that is a huge trip.
That's a mind shift.
Yeah, that is. That's a good way to put it. And so I'm like throwing all my best stuff at them. I teach the same way I did now as I did then, and just throwing them jokes and stuff, and they're just like sitting there, cricket, 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 and it's like, oh man, I suck at this, and but figured it out, made it through.
What size of classes were you teaching? Were these like 20 student classes? Were these like 50 students?
I was from like 20 to 10, depending.
Gotcha.
It was a class. We have a similar class now. It was a technical skills class, but it was all electrics and lighting, and that's what I did for 6 semesters. And it was I learned a lot, and I came out with a leg up on a lot of people who may not have taught when they were in grad school. So it was great. And over the years, I've talked to some of the students that I've had, and they said, it's like, I'm doing theater now because of your electrics class, and it's like, whoa, that's I had no idea what I was doing then. So, all right. So yeah, that was great. So get done, 1998. 1997, about halfway through my grad career, I got a new mentor, a new lighting design professor. And he was his name was Mark Varnes, and he happened, when he came, I said, hey, where'd you come from? I came from Northwest Missouri State University, not knowing in the least where Northwest Missouri State University was, in Maryville, Missouri. And so that kind of got me, so I finished up grad school, and I saw when Mark left Northwest, they didn't really fill his position. They kind of had a couple part-time people come in, and when I graduated, it just happened to be that they had opened up this position. It wasn't the position I have now. It was actually half-time faculty, half-time staff. It was the facility manager and technical director. So
you went straight from grad school. So you're at Carbondale, you're teaching, you graduate grad school, and you came straight here out of that position?
Right, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I had a couple, like I went out to, I had a couple interviews, but I went out to Tufts University in Boston, and I had a great interview, and they offered me the job, okay, in Boston. Really awesome, but we just had a brand, had a 9-month-old baby girl, and it's like, Boston's crazy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I want to deal with that, but I had to turn them down knowing that I had an interview at Northwest. So it's like I had to, that was pretty hard. The thing that made it a little easier, I was talking with, at the time, Dr. Theo Ross. He was the chair of the Communication, Theater, and Language Department. That's where we were housed. and we had talked a little bit beforehand, and I got a really good sense of, what the department was like. And I talked to Dr. Schultz, Dr. Chuck Schultz. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I had him
Chuck,
for
yeah.
oral
Yeah.
comm.
Oh,
baby.
man. Yeah, I love the Drs. Schultz to death. And so I had a pretty good feel, and, just knowing what Mark knew, it's like, okay, so I had to come for an interview, and I stopped at what's the little all-women college in Columbia? Stevens College. I had an interview there, so it's like, okay, I kind of killed two birds with one stone. Got to Stevens, and I walked into the office. Nobody knew I was coming. So they wrangled all this stuff up, and it was like a hot mess right from the get-go. They hired an internal candidate. I mean, I was just the token to be brought in to say they did an outside search. But then I drove on.
So that warmed you up a little bit, right?
Yeah,
You
that
kind
made
of had a chaotic warm up.
Yeah,
there.
and then I get to Maryville, and it was right after a big, huge blizzard, so it was just crazy. I get to the hotel, and there was like a welcome basket on the bed with all this stuff and a Northwest shirt and that fit me. Usually
It's the little things in
Usually
life.
I'm fat guy in a little T-shirt. And I got to, I went out with Dr. Ross that next morning. We talked. There was things all lined up. Bang. It was perfect. And I remember talking with Dr. Schultz before I left to drive back to Carbondale, and he gave me a hug and said, "We'll see you in a couple months." Alrighty then. So, and here I am.
Gotcha.
21 years later.
21 years later.
That's crazy. I'd ask people, like, how long have you been here when we first got here? It's like, well, I've been here, 15, 20, 25 years. I just thought we were going to be here for like 6 years and then move on. Well, that's what we're going to probably do. And then, spin around, and here we are,
The ones who are saying 25 years.
When I came.
I have a quick question about that. So back to your undergrad, how did you get into the technical lighting? Did you see that class offered somewhere? How
We
did
had
you
to take
find that
it was
class?
a required class for the
okay.
for the broadcasting major. So yeah, I took
But
it.
it just had more theater majors in it as well.
Yeah, it was mostly all theater. There might have been a couple RTF folks.
Gotcha.
I think, but I mean, I clicked on it immediately, and my professor, Roy Hoagland, he's been a huge impact on my life, and he just retired from UW Oshkosh. So shout out to Roy and to Mark. They're, everything that I am is because of them. And I took a shine to lighting. I took a shine to Roy, took a shine to the department. And part of being in the class is I had to work on a show. So I got to work on a show, and I got to run light board.
And you
kind
of got a real sense of what it felt like to have your hands in that.
Yeah. And because I'd done it before, I had, I wasn't really a theater major, but I kind of had a leg up on some of the other students. I knew more. And I was a little older. I was non-traditional, but by just a couple of years. So yeah, that's how I.
So what was your first job? So you're
first job,
not paid by your parents. So
my
someone
first
else
job.
paid
Oh
you.
yeah, there was a supper club in Wisconsin. They call them supper clubs. We were back this last weekend for a wedding, and my daughter Madison, who's 21 now, and I said, it's like, oh, look at that, it's a supper club. She said, it's a restaurant. I said, no, they call them in Wisconsin, they call them supper clubs. Well, I used to come in on Saturdays in the morning and clean the bar and take the garbage out, and I got to drive a big truck. I mean, that's why I did it. But then I got, $15 to go out and fart around with all my friends on Saturday night.
Did you do that? Did you do that as part of somebody's company, or did
No,
you
it
work
was
for a company?
no, it was for
people?
the dude that ran the place.
Gotcha.
He owned it, and he
hired you to come in and do those types of things.
Yeah, and then that's my first real job. But my first real job where I got hired and was at Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC, and I think I worked there for like 8 or 9 or 10 years.
Was that out of high school or while
Just
you were
pretty much out of high school? Yeah. So when I was doing the band thing, I was also doing KFC.
Gotcha.
So
KFC in the day, band guy at night.
Yeah. And that's where I met my wife, Terry. She managed one store, I managed another store, and so when Terry listens to this, I had the better store. But
I don't know. I've heard otherwise.
yeah, and it is a bone of contention. But yeah, I had a better store.
The warring of the KFCs.
Yeah, oh yeah, it got intense. But yeah, I mean, I haven't worked at KFC in like 23 years, but I still
eat at KFC.
Oh yeah. What? Seriously, look at me. I eat at KFC, but I still, I mean, it got me through college. It got me, I learned things. I learned how to make chicken, but you learn how to be an employee and to work and do a good job. And, so, I mean, I'm thankful for that. And, it's just, I did my time in fast food. I mean, if you don't have to do fast food ever, God love you. But I mean, a lot of people do, and it got me where I am here.
I think that's a good point.
Absolutely.
When students look at a professor, they don't think, well, my professor worked in fast food for 8 years.
No,
right?
I schlepped chicken for a long time, and it was awesome. It was fun,
right.
Some days.
You mentioned struggling as a student, and I think we hear that a lot from students that come in our office.
They also think their professors never struggled.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
I was a hot mess.
Yeah. So you mentioned something, something clicked and got you on track. What was that thing? What made you realize?
I realized that I needed to get at least a 3.0 to get into grad school. And if I need to get a 3.0, I need to like get my poop in a group rapidly and get my grades better. So I ended up, going to class, and I ended up doing pretty well. And that's the thing that I tell people now. You see a student and they're struggling, or they're just like really not ready for college, and I say, it's like, okay, they haven't figured it out yet. And I don't know if you've ever seen City Slickers. Well, when Curly Joe is saying, it's like, okay, it's the one thing, and the one thing is different for everybody. Well, that one thing is different. They get it. It is different for every single student. Okay. And, I can tell when a student comes back after a break, or usually after summer break, and it's like, okay, they got it. And a funny story, it's I had a student, and he was very arrogant, and he thought he was better than sliced bread. And I don't know if you've ever seen the what movie, Kevin Costner, the baseball movie,
Field of Dreams.
No, the one, he was the catcher.
Oh, Bull Durham.
Bull Durham. Well, remember he called Tim Robbins meat. Well, this student, it's like, he would start mouthing off. I said, "Watch it, meat." I said, "Why do you call me meat?" I said, "Well, meat, when you figure out why I'm calling you it, I'm not going to call you anymore." So for a year, and it made him crazy, and he didn't know how to fix it. And then one afternoon, when the semester the next fall started, he came in. We're having a conversation, and I stopped for a second. I stood up and walked over to him. I shook his hand. I said, "Brent, it's so nice to meet you." And he was like, I thought he was gonna, I saw just a little tiny lip tremble. It's like, Brent, so he got it, and I'm not exactly sure what he got, but I mean, it's the same way for all students. They have to figure it out. And some students come into Northwest prefigured. Mm-hmm. There's some students that come in and they are like on the money, but there's a lot of students that don't. And it's like, don't worry, you're going to be okay. Or I talk to some parents, or I talk to the same thing with my kids. I mean, they've struggled at different points in their academic career, and it's like, don't worry, they'll figure it out. And crazy they did.
Yeah.
So so that's my spiel.
Okay. I always like to ask, thinking back about when you were in college, whether undergrad or graduate, like if you could go back and do it again, is there something you would do differently? Is there one thing you would change? Or
time management. My big problem was I just was too busy working on shows, and I had to say, I got to get up and go to class, or I can't do this. And again, that's another thing. I didn't learn the word. It's the hardest word to say in the English language. It's only two letters, no. And I didn't learn no until I was probably 10 or 15 years ago. And so, hey, do you want to work on my show? Yeah. I'm going to do it. Yeah. And it got me in got me in trouble. And by that point, I was working at KFC, and I'd wake up in the morning, and it's like, I don't want to go to class. And then I'd say to myself, do you want fries or mashed potatoes with that? Okay, I'll go to class. So thank you, KFC.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good motivator.
Sure was.
All right. Well, any other words of wisdom you think students should take from this?
Yeah, just students, this is your chance. I know it's hard because we hold them to pretty high standards, but if you're going to make mistakes, this is where you make mistakes. I mean, it's going to cost you a letter grade or something, but take the chance to make mistakes here, and that's one thing. And then, take advantage of every opportunity that you're given in college. I tell this to students when they come for a campus visit. I talk with the students and the parents, and I say, I mean, no matter where you go, if you come to Northwest, which we love, or if you go someplace else, take advantage of all the opportunities and work hard, and you will be successful. You don't have to have a degree from an Ivy League school to go be successful in theater.
Absolutely.
We have some students. We have 2 or 3 students that are working on Broadway now. And they just sat. And I tell the kids now. I said, okay. So I talk about these individuals, and I said, yeah, they were sitting in those chairs, 15, 16, 17 years ago, but now they're on Broadway or off Broadway, and they're making a name for themselves. And they weren't from Carnegie Mellon or NYU or Yale. Boy, that sounded really bad. But they were from Northwest, and they worked hard and made good choices, and now they're at the top of their game. So,
absolutely, excellent,
awesome. Thank you for chatting with us, Pat.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been a blast. Thanks for having me.
Go Packers.
Right on.
All right, well, that'll do it for another Behind the Bearcat, and we'll talk to you next time.